Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. My name is Remy. What I overheard between my wife and her best friend one otherwise ordinary Tuesday afternoon shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. In just a few minutes, I learned about months of lies, a secret affair, and the painful truth that the woman I had married less than a year ago had been living a completely different life than the one I believed we were building together. Daniela and I had only been married for 2 months, still in what most people would call a honeymoon phase, though I had started noticing small but unsettling shifts in her behavior. It felt as if the excitement of newlywed life was already giving way to the more complicated realities of creating a life as a couple. We were both settled enough in our careers to feel ready for marriage, yet still young enough to be figuring out how to balance personal independence with shared responsibility. I had been putting in longer hours at work than usual, partly because I was trying to prove myself in a new role at my firm, and partly because I wanted to secure the financial stability we had dreamed of: buying a house, starting a family, and laying the foundation for a future we had spent months imagining during our engagement. Because my industry was competitive, I was often at the office until 8 or 9 at night, and sometimes even on weekends when deadlines required extra effort. Daniela's job at a small marketing agency gave her more predictable hours and flexibility. She had been encouraging about my career goals and understood that my schedule was temporary, a necessary step to build a future that would benefit us both. But over the last month, something about Daniela had begun to change. She felt emotionally distant, less engaged, and less affectionate. When I reached out to her for intimacy, she would often say she was exhausted or stressed. Our conversations had grown shallow, focused only on daily routines and practical matters, instead of the deep, meaningful talks we used to have during our courtship. Daniela also complained more frequently about not feeling well, persistent fatigue, nausea, and general weakness, symptoms she attributed to work stress and adjusting to our new lifestyle. I encouraged her to see a doctor, but she brushed off my concerns, insisting she just needed rest and time to settle into our routine. I told myself her distance was just part of the transition couples face early in marriage. I believed things would get better once I was more settled in my role and could spend more time at home. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. Daniela mentioned that she had finally scheduled a doctor's appointment for the symptoms she'd been having for weeks. She didn't offer details, but I was relieved she was taking her health seriously and encouraged her to be open with the doctor. I offered to take time off work to go with her, but she insisted she wanted to handle it alone. Later that morning, around 11:30, I was in the middle of meetings when Daniela texted me saying she had returned from the doctor, was feeling worse than before, and needed to rest. She told me not to worry and to stay focused on work, assuring me that sleep would help. But instead of calming me, her message made me uneasy. How could a doctor's visit make her feel worse? During my lunch break, I decided to check on her. I picked up her favorite chicken and vegetable soup from a restaurant near her office, hoping the gesture might lift her spirits. When I arrived at our apartment, I was surprised to find the door unlocked. Daniela was usually careful about security when home alone. I assumed she had simply forgotten to lock it because she wasn't feeling well. Quietly, I stepped inside, so I wouldn't wake her if she was sleeping. That's when I heard voices coming from the living room. At first, I assumed she was on the phone with her mom or a friend checking in. But as I listened, I realized her best friend Carmen was there with her. I decided to wait quietly so I wouldn't interrupt them. The next few minutes changed my life. I heard Daniela tell Carmen the real reason she'd gone to the doctor. She had undergone an abortion that very morning. She revealed she had been pregnant for about 8 weeks, but was convinced the baby wasn't mine. The timeline of the pregnancy didn't match up with when we had been intimate, and she was certain that if she carried a pregnancy, I would eventually find out the truth. Carmen reassured her that she had made the right choice by keeping everything from me, insisting that telling me would only hurt everyone involved. She even praised Daniela for protecting me from a truth that could have destroyed me. I stood frozen in the entryway, listening to my wife calmly describe ending a pregnancy that she was convinced came from the affair. It felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. All the strange behavior, her health complaints, her emotional distance, the late-night excuses, everything suddenly made sense. Those weren't symptoms of stress. They were pregnancy symptoms she couldn't explain without admitting to her affair. Her coldness toward me wasn't about adjusting to marriage. It was guilt. What struck me hardest was the tone of her voice. Daniela didn't sound heartbroken or conflicted. She sounded relieved, almost casual, as if the abortion was simply a problem solved. She seemed far more concerned about keeping her secret than about what her actions meant for our marriage. When I couldn't listen any longer, I left quietly, sat in my car, and tried to process what I had just heard. My marriage, my entire future, suddenly felt like a carefully constructed lie. Back at work that afternoon, I couldn't focus. My thoughts were consumed by questions. Who was the other man? How long had this been going on? Had our entire relationship been built on lies? That night, I returned home. Daniela was in bed, claiming she was still feeling unwell. Now I knew it was a physical and emotional aftermath of the abortion rather than any mysterious illness. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I gave her the chance to come clean. I asked how she was feeling and what the doctor had said. She repeated the same excuses about stress and needing rest. When I pressed for specifics, she became evasive. Finally, I asked outright if she had been pregnant. Her first reaction was defensive denial, but when I didn't back down, she admitted she had been pregnant, but claimed she had suffered an early miscarriage. Even when faced directly with the truth, she chose to lie. When I made it clear that I knew she wasn't telling the whole story, she finally admitted she had chosen to end the pregnancy. She tried to justify it by saying she wasn't sure I was a father, and that she was only trying to spare me from pain. Her explanation didn't bring comfort, only more questions. If she was unsure about paternity, that meant she had been intimate with another man during the same time she was with me. And if she truly wanted to spare me pain, why betray me in the first place? When I pressed her about who the father might be and when the affair happened, she became defensive and emotional. Eventually, I learned that she had slept with a longtime male friend shortly before her wedding, someone she had secretly had feelings for over the years but never acted on because he'd been in other relationships. She insisted it had been a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness during the stress of wedding planning. But the timing of her pregnancy suggested otherwise. She admitted that she had ultimately chosen to terminate the pregnancy because she couldn't face the risk of raising a child who might not be mine. The revelation hit me harder than I imagined. She had betrayed me during what should have been the most sacred time of our relationship, the days leading up to our wedding. I began to emotionally withdraw as I processed everything. Even as Daniela became more affectionate and attentive, her efforts felt forced, like she was trying to repair the image of our marriage rather than truly taking responsibility. Over the next few days, I discovered more, including the fact that her affair partner was someone I knew socially. He had even attended our wedding, smiling at me while secretly knowing he had slept with my wife just weeks earlier. That was the final straw. After days of reflection, I decided that our marriage could not be saved. I reached out to my brother for advice and support, and then to a family law attorney to begin divorce proceedings. I didn't want drama or revenge, just an end to a marriage that had been built on lies. When Daniela learned I was filing for divorce, she was shocked and begged me to reconsider. She promised complete honesty and to cut off all contact with her affair partner, but her words fell hollow. I moved out and began the process of rebuilding my life. The divorce was finalized within 6 months, since we had no children and few shared assets. Daniela continued to try to reconcile, but I maintained firm boundaries. The entire experience taught me difficult but necessary lessons, that some betrayals are too deep to repair, and that protecting my own emotional well-being sometimes means walking away, no matter how much the other person claims they want to change. Looking back, I realized that overhearing that conversation was both the most painful and the most liberating moment of my life. Daniela's betrayal ended one chapter, but it allowed me to start a much healthier, more honest one. Thank you for listening.